Good afternoon. Welcome to another exciting edition of Reading with Mr. Eble. We're going to finish up Watchdog today, and then on Monday, we're going to get started with another book. And I'll still read it at 12 o'clock every single day. We're going to take the day off tomorrow because we're finishing this book today, Watchdog, and new book next week. It'll be another Name That book. I don't know which one yet. If you need some books, check out Miss Lundquist's book talk from yesterday. Also, check out the Keller website for information on how to get books through online books. Still a good way to read. Here we go. Chapter 20. The hippo thundered outside, trampling a pair of snapping raccoon-sized watchdogs. As soon as they were clear of the church, their little army formed a circle around Vic, Tara, and their friends. They angled to the right, directly at a pack of 4 or 5 of Miss Alba's watchdogs. As they drew close, the circle rotated so Tara's dragon faced Miss Alba's charging watchdogs. A plume of fire burst from the dragon's mouth, engulfing the cluster of watchdogs. When the flame cut off, they were smoking and motionless, their inner circuitry fried. Daisy's phalanx plowed through them and kept going. It's a military term, phalanx. It took Miss Alba's army a few precious seconds to react, giving Daisy time to lead hers around the corner. Wide-eyed little North was on Rando's back, clinging to him for all he was worth. Some of Miss Alba's faster watchdogs caught up before they made it half a block. Vic spotted their friend, the grizzly, toward the front of the pack, its head all fixed up. The dragon, who was now defending the rear, held them off with bursts of flame. There was no way they were going to outrun Miss Alba's army. There's a sacrifice zone 1 block to the right, nothing but piles of rubble, semi-demolished buildings, walls, and trash. Daisy, Vic pointed it out. What about in there? Seemed like a good place to make a stand if you were outnumbered. Daisy studied the apocalyptic landscape for a moment, then changed direction, leading them toward it. They skirted a towering mound of concrete, brick, and twisted steel around a partially collapsed wall. Beyond was more of the same, a maze of walls and twisted girders, some of it in piles, some still standing. Daisy slowed. Her pathetically small army melted away into the maze of ruins. Miss Alba's people wouldn't be able to sneak up from behind and would have no idea where they were. Daisy found an office building rising out a hill of rubble, the first few floors intact and the 2 outer walls peeled away. She hurried them up a stairwell to the 3rd floor and left them there. When she reached solid ground, Daisy grabbed a stop sign and ripped it out of the ground. She tore off the sign, which left her with a steel pole with one ragged end. A silver 6-legged beetle watchdog with huge pincers came around the corner. Daisy raced at it on 3 legs, clutching the pole. She drove the pole right through the beetle, skewering it. When the thing stopped moving, she yanked the pole out and moved on, heading toward the back of the building that Vic and the others were hiding in. I bet all of them have built-in cameras, Rando said. That one was probably a scout to see what it looks like in here. Alba's going to direct them. Peering from behind a huge chunk of concrete, Vic could see Miss Alba beyond the partially collapsed wall. She was huddled with Stripe and Dixie, talking. Dixie pointed at something in the sacrifice zone, and Stripe nodded. They were planning their attack. Daisy had set things up so this really was like a battle in a war. They were outnumbered, but they had a real soldier on their side. Vic started counting Miss Alba's watchdogs. 40, Tara said before he could finish. There are 40, against 9. Even for Daisy, that seemed like too many. He watched them move around. Some of the models looked familiar, but there were new ones out there as well. Tara sat on the floor. She'll stop them. I know she will. Vic's lips felt numb as he watched those killing machines split up into groups of 5. 40 divided by 5 equaled 8. A gang of 5 to go after nearly all of their watchdogs. Vic looked around. Does anyone see Daisy? She's over there. Torch pointed her out. She was climbing a hill of rubble directly behind their hiding place, still carrying the pole. You always want the high ground, especially in hand-to-hand combat. Daisy, Vic called. She stopped and looked at Vic. There are 8 groups of 5, 40 total. Daisy raised a paw to show she understood. Only 3 of her allies were visible from Vic's vantage point. The spider, clinging to the wall of a nearby building, and 2 wolves, perched on a concrete slab halfway up the hill. 5 of Miss Alba's watchdogs appeared in the gap between the wall and the mountain of debris. A second group followed right behind, heading in a different direction. Daisy made no attempt to hide her location. The first group headed right for her. They spread out, and then picked their way up the hill of twisted steel and concrete. A sleek white model that looked a little like a panther was the first to draw close. Daisy shoved the pole through its open mouth and out the back of its head. The panther tumbled down the hill. 39, Tara said. The remaining four stopped climbing toward Daisy. They changed direction, heading toward the pair of wolves perched nearby. That must be Alba. She's directing them wirelessly, East said. She saw that Daisy's plan was to pick them off one at a time. She's not going to let her do that. Two more platoons of watchdogs surged through the gap and immediately headed up the mound of debris toward the wolves. Some of the new watchdogs were simple designs that didn't look like anything living. They were just snapping jaws on legs, or, in one case, a half-dozen buzz saws on legs. "We're going to tear those wolves apart," Torch said as more than a dozen watchdogs closed in. A long plume of flames erupted from a gap between two slabs of concrete to the right of the wolves, and lower down. Three watchdogs were engulfed in the flames, and a fourth, the walking buzzsaw, was partially hit as well. Tara's dragon sprang from the gap and clambered up to join the wolves. 36, 36, Tara chanted, punching the air. The watchdogs that had been closing in on the wolves stopped climbing as the dragon turned its face this way and that, threatening to toast anything that came within range. A commotion began down to the left. Tara's metal hippo was surrounded, its back to the wall. It was too big and heavy to climb to higher ground. As watchdogs closed in, the hippo charged the smallest in the semicircle, a thing that was all razor-sharp, snapping teeth. The hippo trampled it, leaving scrap metal in its wake, but that slowed it enough for the other watchdogs to catch up. The grizzly was part of that group. It clamped its jaws onto the hippo's hind leg at the knee and dug in with all four limbs, dragging the hippo to a stop. The other four watchdogs swarmed. A wolf leaped at the hippo, knocking her off her feet. A squat, armored thing with a huge club tail was waiting. It swung its tail in a wide arc and slammed it down on the hippo with incredible force. The pack of watchdogs raced off, leaving the hippo motionless. 35, Tara whispered, her voice shaking. Vic wrapped his arm around his sister. He knew these watchdogs were more than just robots to her. She put her whole heart into building them, and loved each one of them. Oh no! East pointed below to the pair of wolves and the dragon. Miss Alba's gorilla was carrying a huge, rusted steel plate it must have pulled out of the wreckage. It was rectangular, at least 12 feet wide. The other watchdogs got behind the steel plate as the gorilla carried it toward the plateau. As they drew close, the dragon blasted them with a jet of flame, but Miss Alba's watchdogs were shielded from the worst of it. Vic spotted movement out of the corner of his eye. Daisy was charging across the mound of debris, closing in to attack the group from behind. She reached the rear of the group and drove the pole through a velociraptor's chest. In one fluid motion, she withdrew the pole and rammed the other end into a six-legged thing's head. She towered over the other watchdogs like an adult fighting a bunch of children. Daisy tore through Miss Alba's troops, while above, one of Daisy's wolves jumps from its perch, slamming into the steel plate and knocking the gorilla down the hill into the watchdogs below it. 31, 30, 29, Tara chanted under her breath. Look out, look out! The grizzly had loped up the hill from the opposite side of the slope. It leaped onto the cement plateau and slashed at the dragon with its powerful front paw, knocking the dragon off. The remaining wolf closed with the grizzly, but the grizzly was twice its size. It buffeted the wolf's head like a boxer, denting it on both sides with clanging blows. The wolf managed to clamp its teeth on one of the grizzly's paws. It held on stubbornly, tugging the grizzly toward the edge of the platform as the grizzly went on pounding it with the other paw. Wolf and grizzly tumbled over the edge together. The wolf fell backward, landing right on a jutting steel beam. It rolled off and tried to stand, but its back was bent into a V, its hind legs frozen. The battle was a chaos of moving steel, flashing teeth, sweeping claws, and Daisy's stop sign post. Tara clapped her palms over her face. Here come more! Vic had stopped counting how many of Miss Alba's 8 groups of 5 had come through the breach. Now he saw that it had only been 6. She'd kept 2 in reserve. They swarmed around the wall and charged the hill. Daisy broke away and angled down the hill. Half of Miss Alba's fresh troops split off to go after Daisy, as Tara's spider dropped from its hiding place onto the back of the charging wolf. It bit a hunk out of its neck. 18, Tara said. Daisy was moving more slowly. One of her hind legs looked mangled, and she'd lost one of her eyes. There must have been 10 watchdogs chasing her, the grizzly in the lead. It was banged up, but still moving well. Daisy reached the base of the building, where Vic and the rest were hiding, and turned, her back to the wall so nothing could sneak up on her. Miss Alba's watchdogs charged, all at once. Daisy skewered the first 3 that reached her, then shielded herself from snapping teeth and flashing blades by keeping the body of the biggest and piggish-looking thing between her and her attackers. 13, Tara whispered when Daisy's jaws snapped down on the face of the turtle watchdog with the clubbed tail. There were 5 watchdogs battling Daisy, which meant there were 8 more out in the rubble, fighting the other survivors from the little army. One of the smaller watchdogs had clawed its way behind Daisy. It wrapped itself around one of her hind legs and bit repeatedly, searching for a weak spot. The weight of the watchdog made Daisy stumble. The grizzly took advantage, bounding over the top of the watchdog wreckage Daisy was using as a shield and sinking its teeth into her shoulder. Daisy surged backward and slammed the raccoon-sized watchdog clinging to her leg into the wall. It fell to the ground, badly damaged. The grizzly slashed wildly at Daisy's face with its long claws, catching Daisy's good eye and raking it. Beside Vic, Tara froze. Oh no, Daisy. Daisy flailed at the grizzly with the pole. The grizzly broke away and backed off a few steps. Daisy turned in one direction, then another, swinging the pole, trying to keep the watchdogs away, but she had no idea where they were. She was blind. The grizzly waited for Daisy to swing the pole, then lunged at her, denting the side of her head. It backed away just as Daisy swung the pole. One of the other surviving watchdogs, a velociraptor, scraped a foot along the concrete to Daisy's left. When she turned and swung in the direction of the sound, the grizzly struck again, deepening the dent in her head. Tara tried to stand, but Vic pulled her down. We have to help her. How are we going to do that? His voice was thick with emotion. It was killing him to see Daisy smashed up by those things down there. Before long, those things would be searching for them. The grizzly hit Daisy again. Daisy fell. She tried to get her legs under her, but fell over again. The grizzly landed one more savage blow to her head, then reached down and began peeling back the armor at her hind end. It's looking for the chip, East said. Little Daisy ejected and tried to run, but the grizzly's paw came down on her, pinning her to the ground. Still holding her down, it picked her up in its teeth. Daisy! Tara shouted. Everyone shushed her. There's nothing we can. Vic froze. He looked around at the debris scattered all around. A chunk of concrete the size of a backpack was perched near the edge. Vic slapped Rando on the arm. Help me. They had to be quick before the grizzly moved away. Vic grabbed one end of the chunk of concrete and Rando the other. Gasping with the effort, they carried it to the edge. On 3, Vic said. They rocked it twice, gauging the distance, and let it go. The concrete landed dead center on the grizzly's back, driving it to the ground like a car T-boning an 18-wheeler. Little Daisy wriggled out of the grizzly's mouth and ran right for Tara's spider, which broke off from its fight with a giant beetle and raced to meet her. Daisy jumped onto the spider's back, and they headed for higher ground with 5 of Miss Alba's watchdogs close behind. Vic spotted a lone wolf running to meet them, with a big panther and a snaggletooth wolverine on her heels, 7 against 2.5. Oh no, Rando said. Vic followed his gaze. The gorilla watchdog was looking up at them. Not 7, 8. It headed for the stairs. East picked up a chunk of concrete. Find something to fight with. Anything. His heart hammering in his ears, Vic scanned the littered floor. All the chunks looked too big or too small. Not that it mattered. Police with guns backed down from fights with watchdogs. How could he and his friends win against them with just rocks? Was there anywhere they could run? Vic looked around. There's no way up, no way down but the stairs. Vic! Torch tossed him a piece of 2x4. Vic caught it with 2 hands. What are you going to use? Torch held up his portable laser cutter and smiled. Vic couldn't imagine how Torch could get close enough to the gorilla to cut it without being killed. But it was something. It was a chance. The gorilla stopped at the top of the stairs, like it was soaking in the moment. It looked right at Tara. Vic couldn't believe she wasn't curled up in the corner shrieking for someone to make it go away. She was standing there, a chunk of concrete in her hand, looking right at the thing. Vic was terrified, but he also felt so proud of her. He wouldn't let that thing hurt her. So proud of you, he said. You're not just smart, you're brave. Shut up and concentrate, Tara said. The gorilla charged Tara. He wouldn't let it get to her. He wouldn't. Vic raised the 2x4 and ran right at the charging gorilla. As they came together, the gorilla swung its fist. Vic opened his eyes. He was on the ground, his head aching like he'd never felt it ache before. The gorilla loomed over him, iron fist raised. Rando leaped and wrapped his arms and legs around the gorilla's raised arm. East and Tara swung chunks of concrete, slamming them down on the gorilla's head like they were hammering nails. North was pounding its back with a rock the size of his own head. Then Torch was on the gorilla's back, a laser cutter in his hand. He got to work on the gorilla's neck. The gorilla shook itself and swung its free arm, buffeting Torch, but Torch hung on. It turned its attention back to Vic and opened its mouth, exposing a row of sharp triangular fangs. Tara shrieked and wrapped her arms around that huge head as it came down. Its fangs snapped close an inch from Vic's face. Another set of hands, Rando's, appeared around the gorilla's face as it strained to reach Vic, its jaws snapping with a metallic clank. The head began to bend up, away from Vic's face. Suddenly, it snapped free from the gorilla's neck and dropped onto Vic's chest, knocking the wind out of him. East rolled off, and the others helped him out from under the gorilla's headless body. "You all right?" Rando asked. Gasping, staggering to his feet, Vic nodded. After having the gorilla's fangs so close to his face, the ache in his chest felt good in comparison. He followed the others as they ran to the edge to see what was happening. The wolf was gone. The spider was in bad shape. Daisy was still on top of it, their backs to the wall, directly below Vic and his friends, surrounded by Miss Alba's last 4 watchdogs. Daisy had led the enemy back to the only troop she had left, them. "Go, go, go!" Tara grabbed a brick lying beside her. Vic squatted in front of a big chunk of concrete and then deadlifted it, the rough stone scraping his palms as the others ran to find something to drop. His toes poking out over the edge, Vic swung the concrete chunk between his legs and let it go. Losing his balance, he windmilled his arms as he tipped forward, his stomach lurching. A hand locked on the back of his shirt. "Whoa!" Torch said, yanking him back. The concrete chunk slammed into the beetle's head, taking it right off. The thing collapsed in a heap. The panther went down a moment later. They took aim on the 2 remaining watchdogs, raining bricks and fist-sized chunks of concrete down on them. When the last was down, Daisy took off on the spider. "Where's she going?" Rando asked. "To get Miss Alba," Tara said. Vic could see Miss Alba running for her Maserati. He could also see that she wasn't going to make it. Dun dun dun. Chapter 21. They stood amid the mangled wreckage of what had been Miss Alba's sweatshop as the spider finished turning everything inside the inner office to scrap metal, firewood, and confetti. All her captive workers were gone, free to return to their families. Miss Alba was trying to act as if the destruction of her empire was no big deal, but her forehead was shining with sweat, and as she swiped a wisp of hair from her eyes, her hand was shaking badly. Dixie and Stripe looked flat-out scared. They probably weren't sure if Vic was going to have the spider do to them what it was doing to the sweatshop. He would have never hurt someone, no matter how much they deserved it, but he was in no hurry to let them know that. "Are we through here?" Miss Alba asked when the spider clicked out of the office. Her voice was higher than usual. "Not quite," Vic said. Daisy appeared from inside the office, carrying a plastic bag in her mouth. Inside were 3 tubes containing Tracker's syringes. Miss Alba took a step back. "Wait a minute, we both know those can be deactivated." "Sure, once you locate the proper equipment." East accepted the bag from Daisy and handed out the syringes. Miss Alba hesitated for a long moment, but finally plucked it from East's hand as if it were a dead rat. "Go on," Vic said. "You've all had plenty of practice giving those shots. Now you'll see how it feels." Miss Alba, Dixie, and Stripe all studied the syringes they were holding, looking like they'd just eaten something rotten. "Or Torch can do it for you," Vic said. "You definitely don't want me to do that for you," Torch said, looking on with his arm folded across his chest. Stripe reached across and stuck the needle into his shoulder. He let out a long, slow breath as he pressed the plunger. Dixie cursed under her breath, then squeezed her eyes shut. She inhaled sharply as the needle bit. Everyone turned to Miss Alba. She held her syringe out to Dixie. "I hate needles. You do it." "I did mine. You can do yours," Dixie snapped. Miss Alba held the syringe out to Stripe. Stripe raised his hands. "Not a chance. I told you to forget about the chip and leave that watchdog alone. But did you listen? No, you had to push it." Torch stepped forward and held out his hand. "Here, I'll do it." Miss Alba jerked the syringe out of his reach. "All right, I'll do it," she said. She raised the syringe. "I hate needles." She squeezed her eyes shut and plunged the needle in. When she was finished, she flung the empty syringe to the floor. "You've got 30 minutes to get out of Chicago," he said. "If you're not gone, our friend here will come after you." All 3 headed for the door. When they were gone, Vic and his friend stood silently in the sweatshop office. A tightness that had been in Vic's chest for so long he hadn't realized it was there suddenly loosened. He took a few smooth, easy breaths, relishing the sensation. "So what do we do now?" Rando asked, looking around at the wreckage. "First, we make Daisy a new body," Tara said. "And after that?" Rando asked. It was a good question. Now that Miss Alba was gone, they were free to use Daisy to earn enough to rent a safe place to live and have enough to eat. But Vic was back to wondering exactly how to do that. "I have an idea," he said. The last chapter. Bum bum bum. Chapter 22. Underdressed was too weak a word for what Vic felt as they rose in the spotless glass elevator, shifting left and right with the contours of the skyscraper. His clothes no longer stank, but they were nothing more than rags covering his skin. He examined his friends and felt slightly better. They all looked just as bad, except for Daisy with her shiny new body, made from parts salvaged from the Watchdogs defeated in the final showdown. Remember, Vic said to Daisy, you're just a dumb watchdog. You're only here to model. We don't want anyone to suspect we have something that might belong to the military. Daisy nodded. I still don't understand how you thought to get in touch with a patent lawyer, Torch said to East. How did you even know what a patent lawyer was? I never heard of it before. East caught Vic's eye and smiled. Something I learned about in a past life. The waiting room was all granite and chrome. A miniature waterfall cascaded down the center, through stones that seemed to defy gravity. A guy in a dark suit who'd been messing with his fancy phone gaped at Daisy as they entered, the phone sliding out of his hand and dropping to the seat cushion beside him. After less than 5 minutes, the guy, who turned out to be the receptionist, led them into a big room with a long black conference table down the middle. A woman and a man, both dressed in crisp, perfect suits, were waiting. They introduced themselves as Camille Hernandez and Rolf Weiss, then went right over to check out Daisy. Oh my goodness, Rolf said, his voice hushed. I was excited from the photos, but I had no idea. This is magnificent. Thank you, Tara said. Look at this, Camille pointed at Daisy's eye. Is this a 360-degree design? Tara nodded. I'm very good at designing watchdogs. I'll say, Camille replied, running a finger across Daisy's hip. Daisy gave Vic a look as if to say, Am I acting dumb enough for you? Vic just smiled at her. You designed her all by yourself? Rolf asked Tara. That's right. After a few minutes of this, Camille straightened, then looked at Rolf. Have you seen enough? More than enough. Camille turned to Tara. We'd like to represent you. I can see a dozen patentable innovations just from this quick examination. Our firm gets 15%, which is standard. East said you want to find investors rather than sell the patents outright. Tara looked at East. Is that what I want? East nodded. That means you're going into business for yourself. Tara nodded emphatically. That's what I want. It complicates things that you're minors without legal guardians, but in these times, I think we can work around that, given what you're bringing to the table. Camille offered her hand to Tara. Do we have a deal? East stopped Tara's hand before she could shake. You want one more thing. What's that? East looked Camille right in the eye and said, She needs $10,000. Right now. Camille blinked. Oh, you mean startup funding? East pointed at her. Exactly that. Camille looked at Rolf, who shrugged. She nodded. We can do that. Vic felt an asthma attack coming on. He also thought he was going to faint. $10,000? I'll be right back with a contract and a cashier's check. Camille whisked out of the room with Rolf on her heels. They looked excited. That was extremely cool that a couple patent lawyers were excited about representing them. Hey, Rando put a hand on Vic's shoulder. Can we, work for you? I know you don't need us so you can hire pros now, but since we're friends and all. Vic burst out laughing. You stood between me and a guy who was going to drag me back to Alba to collect a bounty. He looked at Torch. And you helped me cut up the bot who took my mother's job. Then you cut up a killer watchdog whose fangs were an inch from my face. You're not friends, you're family. He choked up, blinking back tears. Seemed like it had been forever since Vic had trusted anyone besides Tara. Felt good to let a few more people in. He looked at Tara, who nodded in agreement. You got that straight. This is our company. All of us. Torch let out a whoop that caused a half-dozen people in the hallway to look in at them through the glass wall. He covered his mouth and called, Sorry. Can we get an apartment now? Tara asked, with royal blue carpet and shell tile in the kitchen and a white concrete birdbath in the backyard in the corner by the water recycler? We sure can, Vic held up a finger. But first, we're going to get some quesadillas, some corn on the cob, and chocolate milk. That sounds good, East said. I'm starving. Or we could send your dumb watchdog out to get it, Torch said, grinning. Laughing, Tara wrapped her arms around Daisy and gave her a fierce hug, then kissed her steel cheek. Daisy just stood there, playing dumb. Dun, dun, dun. So that is the end of Watchdog. So I hope you enjoyed it. Next week on Monday will be when we resume reading with Mr. Eble. We're not doing that tomorrow. It's my day off. So y'all have a great day. Be safe. Take care of one each other. And remember, range is the way.